This situation took place when me and my best friend were only 10. We were extremely young, and it explains why we even made the stupid choice to explore an abandoned house. For context, my friend, who we are gonna call Tay, was extremely wealthy. Her parents owned a private mansion practically in the middle of nowhere. It was in a very quiet village, and her and one other house were the only houses that actually had people living in it. Rest of the houses? All abandoned. Some houses still looked like it hadn't been finished in building, and some looked like the place had been long after it was destroyed. Well, one of those abandoned houses really caught me and Tay's eye. The house was not too far away, but you couldn't see it from her place. As a kid, I was more of a teller, and she was the one that took actions. I told the creepy stories I knew, and she always had a way of making it creepier by doing stuff that would make my story seem real, or just take actions to test if what I said was true or not. One time, I was telling a scary story I learnt from my Georgian grandmother. Every Eastern European knows Baba Yaga. The awful kid-eating witch that had a house with long chicken legs and scary arms that could take you and feed you to Baba Yaga. I was young, and believed in this story and told Tay about it. Both of us were freaked out, but she suggested we went to the abandoned house down the road, since it really reminded her of Baba Yaga's house. Although I liked to tell the stories, I was a big scaredy cat, and it took me a long time before Tay fully convinced me. Little did we know what we would see was way scarier than the old witch tale. So, next day, without Tay's mom knowing, we went to that awful house. When we arrived, Tay was the first one to go in. We both hesitated at first, since it's natural for anyone, especially kids, to be freaked out, and hesitated to go in an abandoned house. We mustered up the courage anyways and decided to knock first. From the outside look of this house, there was zero chance someone could live here. The wood the house was built out of looked burnt, the windows at the top and bottom floor looked extremely dirty, while some were shattered, and the outside in general was extremely dirty and trashed. It still surprises me till this day on how it hadn't been taken down or something. Well, despite that, we knocked on the rusty door multiple times, and when we made sure no one was inside, we opened the door. The door was actually open, and when we stepped inside, I couldn't help but gag at the reeking smell. Trash. All that comes to mind is that word. The walls had no wallpaper and the floors were all concrete. There were 3 turns you could make. You took the right and there was what looked like an abandoned living room, full with burnt furniture. The only furniture I could clearly make out was what looked like a mattress in the middle of the room and a nightstand with some old books on it. Nothing more, nothing less. The room had no light other than the shattered window on the front wall. In front was a walkway to a door. The door looked somewhat broken, but we didn't explore it further. On the left was the weirdest one. When you walked in, you were greeted by a massive block missing from the floor with some built fences around it. We both looked down the hole and saw it was a sewer. No joke, a sewer. Me and Tay exchanged looks of confusion, and I was about to say something when I heard it. Footsteps. Extremely loud ones. It came from the house. I made the run for it. I didn't look at Tay once and ran to the front door we had arrived from. Surprise, surprise, the door was closed. I didn't even scream, neither did I try to test if the door was locked or not. I immediately ran into the right room and through the broken window, running TF out. I ran and ran until I was far enough from the house that I could see the whole house. I worriedly waited for Tay to run out, and thank goodness I saw her, jumping out the same window, panting. She was already screaming, and I ran toward her to get her hand and run faster. I looked back once and saw what looked like a smiling elderly man. He had something in his hands I hoped wasn't a knife. He was smiling so widely. I still remember his terrifying face and get the chills thinking about it. His clothes were ripped and stained. We ran and ran, passing her house's front entrance and going to the back. We were both terrified. I remember my heart beating faster than ever and being barely able to breathe. The house was no longer visible, but we both were still shaking. We both ended up running in her house and without a thought ran to her mom's room. Tay's mom still didn't know we were outside and was confused at our shaking and worried selves. "Mom! Mom!" "A man chased me with a K-knife," she mumbled and cried out, and I covered my mouth in shock and horror. It was a knife after all. We had to explain the whole thing, but Tay's mom didn't mind us sneaking out as much as she minded the man. She hugged us both and sent me away to my hoys as soon as possible, after calling the police. They ended up moving to a different house, way farther from that area, and they ended up catching the man. The man apparently was sent to prison because of murder of several people that were found in his house. Me and Tay still talk about this incident sometimes, and I can't but wonder, what would happen if I tried taking a run out the door instead of the window? Edit: this is my first ever story, and I want to add the half of this was actually true. I'm not gonna share extra details, but here it is. Thanks for reading.